Hi, African Queen Mo family. How are you doing? Today is another day. It's actually the day before a public holiday in Kenya. Today is the 11th of December, and tomorrow, 12th of December, is a public holiday. So, Susan, what are we actually celebrating tomorrow? She'll tell us about it in a minute. So, that's my colleague you're seeing over there. Her name is Susan, and she's a lawyer and she's a mediator, a workshop facilitator, she's an evaluator, she's a researcher, she's everything basically. But mostly she's a very good human rights defender and lawyer. you know and so, yeah, for me, what am I am African Queen Mo. I am actually an evaluator, and of course I don't go with that name when I go professionally. Yeah, I go with Maureen when I go professionally, and I'm an evaluator and a researcher for many, many, many years. So we've worked many years together with Susan, and that's how we get along really well, like wildfire. And we hope that you're going to enjoy our show tonight. Tonight, we're talking about things that are a little bit more political, and we're going to be here talking about. Okay, we're going to be here just for a short time. This time, maybe about an hour, hour and a half max, and we're going to be talking about impunity, corruption, and the undemocratic principles that the societies globally seem to have adopted. What is happening nowadays is that it's very difficult to find people who are honest. Honesty and integrity seem to be values that are no longer, in vogue, en vogue anymore. Yeah. And this is why there's so much impunity with corruption. People are happy to lie. They do it without even thinking about it. People easily, will bribe, give a bribe, take a bribe. And, that's even lower level corruption. I'm talking about grand scale theft of billions of shillings, of dollars, take money that is not their money, public money, and siphon it to projects that don't even help the public, leave the public, in pure agony. And you see this happening all over the world. It's not just in Kenya, not just in Africa, it's all over the world. And that doesn't justify it. It doesn't actually justify it. But the fact is that why is it that we have taken up this corrupt attitude? Yeah. So the other thing is that you also see the same corrupt attitude in relationships. Yes, beyond the society and governance. You see it in corruption. You see corruption in the home. You see people always wanting to take shortcuts. You see adultery. It's a form of corruption. Yeah, when you're cheating on your spouse, you make a vow to your spouse to promise them the world, and then you break the same vow the same night, even before the night is over. You're already planning how you're going to be off running off with the best maid, like within the next week, or the best man. Yeah, or something, or you're going to go back to your ex. That's a corrupt mindset. And these things are actually breaking up our societies. We need to talk about them so that, we can just highlight them and let people know that we are aware what's happening and we're not happy with it. But right now, I'll let Susan introduce the subject and run from here. Yes. Hi, Susan. Karibu sana.
Hello, greetings everybody. I'm happy to be here. As usual, we have had an exciting week, and yesterday we were celebrating the International Human Rights Day, and also it was the last day of the 16 days of activism. And here in Kenya, they had planned some peaceful protests. Actually, if you ask me, there were marches because there was ladies mostly, some few men in there as well, but mostly young ladies and ladies who were up there with their placards saying end gender-based violence, saying no to sexual and gender-based violence. And from what I understand, my following of the media reports was that they had actually reported, they had followed the procedures to allow this walk to take place. They had even shown the route they were going to take. There was no intention to go to Parliament, but they went to the courts, the judiciary. They went there because that's one of the main institutions that deals with this violence. When it comes to court, they have to hear either it as a case of femicide or a case of sexual abuse or a case of physical abuse, or even within the context of a matrimonial setting, there could be issues of violence in the family, and that being a reason for the divorce being sought. So the judiciary interacts with uh, gender-based violence in very many aspects in the courts of law. So that was one of the ports of call of the peaceful protesters. They had whistles, they had water, they had, so they were really peaceful, but they were trying to make sure that their words were heard, and they were, singing and chanting end gender-based violence. Unfortunately, these young women and men who were out there protesting, after having followed the procedure, they were set upon by the police. And it was really unexpected. They did not expect that. That was the last thing they expected. And the paradox is that they were protesting about gender-based violence, and the police became violent. And in some cases, it was actually men who were meeting out the violence. They had sticks, and they came and they hit the female protesters with the sticks. We had post arrests, and you have many injuries, including journalists. I'm looking at the Daily Nation report story on this. I'm sure you read about it. And they also detained some people. In fact, there's a video going around of this young lady who has been arrested, and she's being sort of manhandled by a female police officer and put into the back of this van. And she's saying, "What have I done? Let me know what I've done." And she said, she even said her name. We know the protests that occurred earlier in the year, in June, that there are still some missing people as a result of that protest. So we had
Mhm.
a number of people detained, including the Irongo Horton, who's the executive director of the Amnesty International Kenya. A lot of institutions came out, like the Law Society, Amnesty International, and other civil society organizations spoke out about this. And so, what was unclear is even why they came to disrupt the peaceful protesters, the peaceful people who are marching. It is enshrined in the law that people are entitled. When I say the law, I'm talking about the Constitution. You're entitled to freedom of. It's a constitutional right, freedom of assembly, and even to protest and demonstrate. It is there in our constitution. So why were they interfering with them? So basically, the protesters met at about 9 o'clock at Jivanji Garden, and they were supposed to take off the march about 10. Um, but what followed was, like as is described in the news, a cat and mouse game, which went into the afternoon. So the nearby business premises, they shut down because it's not like what happens usually when there are protests and they're running battles between the police and wananchi. The businesses suffer, but they close them down. There was so we even know, we received reports from first-hand reports from people who were physically there about being hit, the policemen being very aggressive, hitting. We even saw a video of a policeman body checking a young lady. I mean, it was just so shocking. Their behavior was atrocious. You know, she's merely holding a poster and singing and gender-based violence. Actually, we would have expected that they would have joined in and escorted them peacefully where they wanted to go, because it is a national issue. We've seen too much of this in the news, too much of it. One too many, too much of it, and in such a short period of time. And it's something that we really need to take seriously. There have been calls that it should be called it's a national crisis, and the president gave 100 million shillings to the women representatives at the commencement of the 16 days of activism. This money was supposed to be invested in the safe homes, safe spaces activities, and also in the 16 days of activism. What was really telling, and now this is an observation of a political analyst when he was looking at the videos, that the political class were conspicuous in their absence. The women reps were conspicuous in their absence. And yet they had been the ones who had been given this money to invest in this. So you'd have expected at least a few of them to turn up. The women who are in the women who are the politicians, at least to have turned up, but we didn't see much of that. So we had various people there, and they had T-shirts, so that you could clearly see these guys are part of this protest. So, a clear way of trying to distinguish themselves from the people who are trying to, interfere with the main purpose of the war. So basically, there was a call for justice. We had people. The walk was not just in Nairobi; it was also in Nyeri. It was in other parts of the country. I can see also in Nakuru, it was there. Some of the T-shirts were written, "Stop killing us." That's what was written there. This is now in Nakuru. A number of marches, even Kisii. I can see even Kisii, Homa Bay. Had some activities that were related to that, even Siaya County. And so there were activities all over the place, to support this and to end gender-based violence. And as we know, this is a serious issue. We talk about the quality of life of young women, of women generally, living under this threat. As we keep saying on this show, the Kenya Demographic Health Survey of 2022 did notice that there was a linkage between marital status and experiences of violence. And it's higher when within an intimate partner relationship or within a marriage. And this is something of concern. And we know the cases, we've been looking at a few of them, that they happened in that context of an intimate partner or within a marriage setting. And so these are some of the things that were highlighted here. So we had also the and this, by the way, this is an activity that takes place every single year. We have the 16 days of activism. And then on December 10th, it's Human Rights Day. And so it culminates there. This is when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was came into being. And it's a day that's celebrated because that particular convention was a response to the World War II, and where the nations came together and agreed on basic principles of human rights. And this is a universally accepted uh, declaration. It has been accepted, all over. So these are what I noticed even from the videos is these young ladies were carrying placards and saying, "Look at the names of some of the ladies who we have lost as a result of this crisis." Then there were a list of names, and we know there were more than that because over 97. In fact, as we were counting, there were over 100 in that short period of time. So this remains a problem. Remember, in the show on Monday, I noticed that when I was looking at the scorecard for the parliamentarians, that one of the issues that they wanted to discuss one day was actually the crisis or the status of femicide.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be a discussion in parliament, and there was no quorum, so they couldn't discuss it. So these are the
Yeah.
sort of things where you question the commitment of
Let me see,
the
Susan.
government.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let me see if I can, just to help you, let me see if I can share some of those videos that maybe try and show them on my screen. Let me just try. I'm just trying to be your assistant. Just a sec.
Yeah, yeah.
Present. Let me see here. Share screen. I'm trying to share the screen. I hope it's going to work, guys. Pray for me. Pray for me. I need prayers. Okay.
After people attending an anti-femicide march were tear-gassed by officers. Several hundred people had gathered in the capital, Nairobi, to take part in the demonstration, which reports say was peaceful. However, they were repeatedly targeted by police officers who fired tear gas from moving vehicles. Those who had gathered were trying to bring attention to the issue of femicide. This is the international killing of females and girls, intentional rather, killing of females and girls on account of their gender, such as intimate partner violence or so-called honor killings. The Kenya National Police Service says that between August and October, there were nearly 100 confirmed cases of femicide in the country. UN statistics also show that there are a daily average of of 140 femicide cases globally. Back in Nairobi, Amnesty International have called the Kenyan police's reaction to the march a direct attack on Kenya's democratic principles and the human rights of its citizens. The country's police force was heavily criticized for its actions during anti-government protests in the summer, in which at least 60 people lost their lives. All right, let's now bring in the BBC's Anita Nkonge, who covered the protests. You've actually just got back from the march, I believe. I mean, tell us more about what happened. What was it like?
I think what stood out to me the most was the reaction by the police. Like you said, a lot of the protesters were relatively peaceful. All they had were their posters, whistles, and they kept chanting end femicide, we stop killing our women. But what we kept seeing was when protesters would gather, police would shoot out tear gas, and this happened, I think we counted over 9 times across the day. But what was also interesting was that as protesters kept being dispersed, they kept coming back with even more energy, even more vim, asking the police, we're asking you for help to help us with the cases of femicide. Why are you attacking us in this moment where we're peaceful protesters? But for more on this, let's take a look at the story that I gathered today. We have been witnessing hundreds of protesters gathering here in the central business district, protesting an end to femicide. There's also been a back and forth between the police and the protesters, with the police shooting at tear gas.
I'm here to fight for the rights of women because we don't deserve to be killed. I don't know why we're being tear gassed because, as you can see, all we have is water and placards. It's supposed to be a peaceful protest.
I'm here on the streets to fight for my generation. The women that will come after me need to find a better environment for them to exist. So that's why I'm in the streets today.
According to the Kenyan police, in the last 3 months alone, 97 women have been killed in the country. The UN says figures of intimate partner and family-related femicide were highest in Africa in 2023, with over 21,000 women killed. Lucy Njeri's 23-year-old daughter was found dead in October 2024, allegedly killed by a friend.
The most painful moment is when you enter in the mortuary and find your daughter or your loved one lying in that thing of the mortuary. Nyakio was charming. Nyakio was bubbly. Nyakio was the most beautiful girl in this world. People loved her so much. She was very social. Life has been very hard emotionally and psychologically.
The police appealed for help on social media, seeking the public's help to find their main suspect. But some activists believe the force should do better in handling femicide cases. In August 2024, an alleged serial killer of 42 women escaped police custody and remains at large.
First, declare femicide a national disaster. If a woman is being killed every other day, what does that mean? If it was any other pandemic, wouldn't the government have mitigated? They have done nothing to mitigate against femicide.
Kenyan President William Ruto has pledged nearly $800,000 to a government campaign called Safe Homes, Safe Spaces. It aims to combat femicide and support victims of domestic violence.
There's people who run safe houses. We haven't received, no one has contacted us and no one has talked to us. We don't want him to throw money at issues. We want him to do a concerted campaign to end femicide.
Despite being dispersed today, the protesters say that they will return to the streets if their demands are not met. They want to see stringent changes in the current laws dealing with sexual and domestic violence. They also want to see femicide added to the penal code.
Yeah. So, success at last, Susan, for something so important. Yeah, something so important. I hope everybody heard that. Yeah. The question is, Sophia is asking, what's wrong with the police? It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, you know what? The things I learned. There's another blogger that I actually watch. His name is Chris Kumekucha, and he's actually the son of a policeman, and he has been doing analysis for like over 20 years. You should watch his programs. Actually, he's very good, and he says that having grown up the son of a policeman, he can tell you that police never act without instructions from above, from their bosses. They never. So definitely that was an instruction from above. The police act on instruction. So the question is, who is pressing the button? Who is instructing the police to go on the very last day of a campaign that was initiated by the president himself, that was flagged off by the president himself? You know, why would they go and destroy his entire campaign and mar it and give it such a bad image, with international press, international press, whatever. This is terrible. This is absolutely, actually, to me, it's almost like a sabotage of the president's own initiative. This is one of his projects that has failed globally because of the way it ended. What do you think, Susan?
Yeah.
With
No,
international
in
press
fact,
like this,
yeah, it
it's
was
like
very
sabotage.
it was very negative. A very negative picture. It was not a good picture. In fact, I remember trying to process what I was hearing because I heard the report before I saw the pictures, and I thought, my gosh, I wasn't this a anti-femicide march? They were marching against violence, and they've been beaten up. I mean, violence has been used against them by in the story that I heard directly was actually by a male on female. So they were committing gender-based violence, the police officers,
Yes.
even
Even
body
by
checking,
searching.
body,
Yeah, body searching of women.
but
What was that about?
body
It's
checking.
weird.
You know that like they're playing basketball or something. There was this huge guy who body checked a lady, and you know, and they were pushing them and just like running amok among them, just causing mayhem and confusion. And these ladies ran, some fell down, trying to get away from them. And what I do like is that our Kenyan youth are very resilient. These Gen
Yeah,
Zs,
they
they're
are.
very resilient. They've
Congratulate
said,
them.
we're going to come back. We're going to come back. And they have some of those young ladies who have passed away are young ladies. These are people they can relate to. They were
Yeah.
their classmates, their schoolmates, some a friend of a friend, a relative. I mean, for
Mm-hmm.
the rest of us Kenyan families, where some we know there must be somebody, we know somebody who knows those people directly, the
Mm-hmm.
families that are affected by that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we have a member, a politician, her child, the one we just saw there. I mean, being a victim of that, and that was intimate
Mm-hmm.
partner violence, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it's something that is very close, something we can all relate to one way or the other. It's not a distant thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it is, like we say, women's rights, human rights. I mean, the harm of the woman, of any woman, is actually we are harming our society generally, and it's making it an unsafe space. If women cannot be safe, nobody can be safe, because we're supposed to be protected. And it means that it's not a safe space. Actually, our
Yeah.
indicators in terms of safety are quite we are not scoring very well as a nation. We're
Mm-hmm.
our scores. I was looking at an index. I've forgotten what its name, but there's an index that shows, and one of the areas where Kenya scored really badly at was security. Security,
Mm-hmm.
people are not safe, which is
Mm-hmm.
terrible. To
Mm-hmm.
think that the people who are supposed to be protecting you are the same ones who are harming you, and like like you said, that young man's the one you were talking about. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
The police will not act on their own. In fact, it's called regime policing. They go and make arrests because they've been told, go and arrest ABCD. These are the sort of things that we're finding the human rights activists talking about. That
Mm-hmm.
there's regime policing. It's not really about whether or not at the end of the day that you committed a crime. People are being arrested because of the principles they hold. They're standing up, their activism on issues that should be everybody's issues, because they're enshrined
Mm-hmm.
in our
Yeah.
constitution. So one
And
thing, like I'm
since
saying,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
one thing
No, go
I
ahead.
was saying that really
One thing
stuck.
you're saying. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, something that I was saying about this. I was listening to a political analyst who's making certain observations about this whole thing, and he said that 100 million investment that came at this point in time, just before, on the first day of
Mm-hmm.
the 16 days of activism. Concerns were that could this be a control mechanism? There was an intention by government to control the rollout, the activities. There's some concern also about the protests that the Gen
Mm-hmm.
Zs have because of what happened earlier in the year, that they could easily escalate out of hand and out of
I don't
control.
think so, because they
What
should
is
have
that? And then
expected. No. They should have
yeah,
expected
so
some sort of closing ceremonies of sorts, or some parades. That
they
was
should
really
have.
like a parade. It wasn't even a protest. It was
It
like
was
a
reported.
march. It's a parade. it's a way
It was,
to
yeah,
close something. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Fia is
They
saying,
had
like
the
you're saying,
information. Mhm.
hmm yeah, Fia is saying,
They,
let's hope the money,
mhm.
let's hope the money can be accounted for. And it's true. I heard earlier that money
Yeah,
has not even been received. Like, for example, those young men who were marching up here, the ones that I joined at the beginning,
yeah,
they didn't receive any
yeah,
money. Yeah. So that
yeah.
yeah. Let me
But
just
one of
also
the
say that.
protesters,
Hmm,
yeah, mhm.
yeah, go ahead, Susan. Go ahead. Let me not finish. Let me allow
Yeah,
you to
one
finish.
of
And
one of the protesters also said she runs a safe space and she's not received any money. So this money has not been, it's not yet reached the people who are supposed to benefit from it. And then the other thing is that, the concern was the numbers, the sheer numbers that, the young people are able to mobilize to do these marches. There's some concern there because we have a combination of influencers, civil society organization, and university students, which are a constituency who are just there and they're able to move. The way the arrests were taking place, they were recklessly, they were not of human rights, and they didn't follow the procedure. I questioned that young lady, said, "Oh, why are you arresting me? Where are you taking me?" And then there was it's also clear that the way that they are so determined to come back and keep coming back is the stand that the public has taken against the excesses of government and the excesses of the executive, that they're literally fearless, so the other thing was that the absence of the women leaders in the protest, it was as if they anticipated something which we didn't see. And then of course there's the other issue of, did we get actually enough media coverage on this issue? How much of it was really covered? Was it really well covered? And was the information flowing out so in real time as it should have been? We know some journalists were actually arrested, injured, not arrested, they were injured as a result of this. And we know some of the civil society guys were arrested. But that is not really the response we were expecting that day. And I'm sure many people listening were having like a feeling like we are being gaslighted or something completely. The picture was a very confusing picture to absorb. That the very thing we are fighting is an example of it is being meted before the whole world to see. Before the whole world to see. Some people I talked to said they could not even take content because of the chaos. They took off. They had to run away. Everybody was running away.
you know what was shocking is that there was very little local media coverage on this. Most of the coverage I'm finding that I found was on the AP, Al Jazeera, France. Kenyan local
BBC.
media networks were gagged. They were gagged. For that goes to show that someone somewhere, I believe the political class, are actually practicing a lot of gender-based violence in their homes. And so maybe I really believe that. I believe that they are actually practicing gender-based violence in their homes, or they are victims of it and are ashamed of it and don't want to come out. But most of it, I think, has got something to do with the fact that they're practicing it. I think it could even be part of the agreement. How do I know? How could it be? How do we know? How do we know? How do we know? In order to serve, you must beat your wife. You must do this. You never know. Because you see, it goes with the culture of the executive. The culture of what is the culture of the executive so far? Kenyans have their own beliefs about what happens at that level. What's happening at that level? Not femicide necessarily, but what's happening could be gender-based violence. We're not saying there is, but Kenyans have been stating that there is gender-based violence happening. And so, I mean, it's difficult to take negative criticism, especially when it touches on you individually. But anyway, let me not go into it. Let me just show a few more videos and allow me to do that for a sec, so that people can see, because I think now I can see that I can actually show them, and this would be much easier if I could do it this way. Present. Yeah, share screen. Yeah.
It's just impunity. It's just impunity
Mm-hmm.
and undemocratic practices. In that statement, direct attack on Kenya's democratic principles, and that is true.
Mbona tuna screen? Sasa narusha hizo pia. Sasa shwari. Lakini pia polisi
Ndio huyu anarusha hapa, cheki. Hiyo imerushwa hapa chini kwetu. Hata huyu chali ameanguka. Was it a gunshot? Fuck.
gunshots.
Fuck. You can't see pale?
Naona.
You see that guy amelala chini?
Hiyo ni
What the fuck? I think hiyo imekuwa gunshot. Wallahi hiyo ni gunshot.
we. Alas.
Shit.
That's him. Inanuka.
That's a lot. Ikiingia itakuwa ni
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've seen that one. Let's see another one here. Mm-hmm. This one is by Al Jazeera.
Certainly, I think this is a reflection on the low political will to address the issue. It's not being taken with the seriousness it needs to be taken. And yet, women constitute over, is it like 52% of the population of this nation? And so it's even more grave than that. The issues that were being raised was about the change in the law to make, to include femicide in the penal code. Because currently what it does, it doesn't have like, I believe a form of it is in the penal code. I'll have to check, but what it does is it says to kill, any form of killing, any form of killing is supposed to to be of is punishable by law, and actually murder or unaliving is carries a death sentence. We saw the case of this young lady, Ruth Kamande, where she was sentenced to death because she was found to have unalived her.
Yeah. Susan, let me ask a question. Did you see the video that I showed? Were you seeing it? Could you see it?
Yes.
As you were talking as well? Because it's like you were talking over the person who was narrating. Did you notice that? I think there's a a delay. The second one on Al Jazeera. Did you see the Al Jazeera one?
Yes, I did, and I stopped. I was talking, but then you showed it, and I stopped talking.
Oh, I'm just trying to. No, I think. Oh no, I think there was an overlap. I think there's something wrong with my my skills in terms of trying to present, because I was presenting and as it was presenting I could hear your voice, and I think that was just a mistake. So sorry guys, those of you who are in the comment section, apologies, this is just me with my we're having a technical hitch here, so I think I need to notify Susan when I'm going to actually present, so that she also knows that it's going to be presenting, because I think we're using different technology, using phones, and when you use a phone and a computer, a laptop, you see different things. That's just a fact with StreamYard. Yeah. So anyway, that was it was Al Jazeera presenting and showing. What I wanted to show was that men and women both came out, in support of the anti-femicide, anti-femicide 16 days of activism. So it's not just a woman thing. It's a woman and man thing. And a lot of men have actually come on board to support this whole movement and against femicide. And therefore, you ask yourself, the question is that I ask myself is, if the government, because the police represent the government, if the government can actually come out and throw tear gas at women who are protesting against anti-femicide, then it goes to show that the government it doesn't really mean what it says, that it's actually showing a level of impunity and corruption, and being being undemocratic, being corrupt, having impunity, and just not being honest, being completely dishonest. So in other words, this whole anti-femicide campaign was a dishonest campaign. It didn't have any good intentions, because why did it result in the tear gassing of protesters, of anti-femicide protesters? Why would it do that? By the government itself. Why?
Yeah, but
Why?
gender-based issues take a back seat. Remember that even the two-third rule has not been observed. There was supposed to be a law that was passed by the parliamentarians. They haven't done it. It's been pending. There have been a lot of advisory opinions about how it's supposed to happen. No action has been taken by Parliament. This again is a gender issue. Again, it's not taken that seriously. Another thing is that the National Gender and Equality Commission, that is an independent commission, but some of the things you'll hear these independent commissions talking about is underfunding from government. So that commitment to deal with the gender issues. And when we talk about gender, we're not just talking about women, we're talking about women, girls, men, and boys, because there are different areas where more attention has to be paid, where this whatever tool called affirmative action has to be used to sort of like try to equalize the space that's happening. We have talked here about androcide too, where men are being unalived by intimate partners, or even in the context of marriage. We've seen those cases also, and I think we've observed some videos on those too. So it's really about safe space, safe homes, safe spaces. Violence is a completely unacceptable way of dealing with one another. It is, it is not something that is healthy. The effect on the family, the effect on children, the effect on the environment, the way it impacts one's potential, to be a productive and effective member of society. Violence is absolutely a no-no. And as Queen Mo was saying, that there is a connection between our previous videos, we've talked about, is there a connection between misogyny and gender-based violence and gender-based violence, sexual and gender-based violence? And we found that there is, because of some of the principles of underlying thinking in misogyny. For instance, the guy is called the pickup artist, which is the males really just it's a sexual activity, a sexual movement, where it's about that is their objective is sexual. They don't care about consent. And again, some of the tenets of some of the different groups within what we're calling the manosphere, that space where that digital space where men are teaching each other misogynistic principles of living in a society where we have both genders, and disregarding and seeing women as vacuous, and just trying to get the best out of them, and all type of principles which have very little to do with what women really think. And they've come up with all these things and interpretations that women like mean guys. And I mean, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Boys. Bad boy
the
syndrome.
Good guy, yeah, the good guy will not will not attract women, but the bad guy always does, and it's completely false.
But it's
beauty is in the
probably true,
eye of the
Susan. No,
beholder.
it's probably true. It's probably true, because you see, also the media tends to highlight and to promote the rugged, unkempt, boy, tough, hard, unempathetic, highly testosterone man. Testosterone is not a bad thing, but I mean, hypersexual man. That's the person who is promoted by the media. Apart, and sometimes they've been promoting recently the very soft man, the man who is emasculated, who's no longer a man anymore, who doesn't have any opinions. So it's always one extreme or the other, not just a regular normal human being. But now let's not move away from femicide issues and GBV, because, like, for example, just this week I received a message from one of the ladies who I really have been supporting and helping along. She's a young woman. And she said, she calls me mom. In Africa, we call, out of respect, younger women call older ladies mom. I'm not her mom, but she calls me mom. So she says, hi, mom. I've reached a point where I must leave this marriage. Why should I wait for death? Sorry, but I have to leave the kids with their dad. This is what she said to me. And I stopped the car quick. I was driving and I just stopped. I looked for a place to stop really fast, because, you know, I was there for her when she was trying to make a decision whether or not to keep a child. And because I will tell you openly that I am anti-abortion, right? So she came on, and I think I met her on a social media platform, and I saw her story. She was giving her story about how she was preparing to go for an abortion, although she didn't want to do that. She was going to terminate her pregnancy. And I was so anti that idea that I was actually ready to, something inside me said, look, take care of that child. Just tell her to have the kid, and you take care of the kid. Or at least take care of the kid for as long as you can until she comes to her senses. Because sometimes, when they make a decision, when a woman makes a decision in haste, yeah, this is what she ends up doing and ends up regretting it. And so, now I finally managed somehow or the other, maybe because of my intervention, the father of this child decided, I contacted the father of this child when I was with this child. When the child was born, I contacted the father and talked to him gently, asked him why he wouldn't want to look after the woman and the child and all that. And funny enough, we managed, to reconcile them, but not before quite a bit of things were happening, because without mentioning any names, we had gotten to the point where the child was actually going to be taken over by the state. Yeah. The child is going to be taken over. But when he heard that his child is going to be taken by the state, he came in. He came back in. And now he's causing harm, grievous harm, on the same lady that I was looking after. And here I was wondering, what can I tell this lady? What can I tell her? So the only thing I've told her is, look here, we have to find a way. She says, now timing is not on her side. She's talking about the fact that, she's even strangling her. Strangling? Now that is very, very, very dangerous. Yeah. So now I'm saying to myself, what can I do to support, to save, to help this young woman? She's a young woman. What can you do? Because, by the way, now she's a mother of another child. She got two more. Okay. So with the same guy. And I'm like, now what do we do? What do we do next? Apart from find her accommodation, but he's promised, to come after her. What can you do? She's tired of reporting to the police. When you guys heard the story about Sarah Kabu, we talked about it the last episode. We talked about the Sarah and Simon Kabu story. Sarah Kabu actually said that she had reported so many times to the police that she was tired. She had reported incidences of GBV so many times to the police to no avail, to the point where eventually she had to go and report to the director of criminal investigations, who now took up the matter, and it became serious, and took it serious and followed it up. So the same situation with this young woman, because I said, why don't you go to the police? They have a gender desk. And she says, I've been there many times. They don't help me. They tell me, those are domestic issues. You go back and you go and try and resolve it. What would you do? What would you guys do? Can you guys tell me in the comment section? What should I do for this young woman? What can I do? Because you see, like talking about, you heard that lady in the anti femicide march say that that they have home. What do we say? They have safe spaces for women, but they're not getting
Shelters.
funded. They're not getting funded.
Shelters.
Yeah. Shelters, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they have shelters, they're not getting funded. So
Mm-hmm.
what can you do? Because such a young person cannot go back to her home. She can't go back to her home because it's a very poor home. And they feel, usually many women feel that they're going to be adding a burden. So what do you do in such a situation? I would appreciate, if you would give me some advice, Yeah, advice is good.
Yeah. So in my view, that is actually a missed opportunity to prevent, because I was listening to a program in the England, where this lady, that's her job. She's at the prevention of homicide desk, and her job really is to try and lower the figures of homicide and femicide and all the the different methods of killing, of unaliving people. And so she said one of the tools they use is data. And one of the things they do is, for instance, they collect that information of how many complaints have been collected, and they're able to anticipate that this is a potentially dangerous situation. And as a result of using the data in the correct way, they've been able to have number of potential homicides that would have occurred, intimate partner homicides, or even the within a marriage homicide. They've been able to have them because they have the records. When they notice a certain pattern of behavior, and this is about the police changing their attitude and taking complaints more seriously. And this is actually a tool where perhaps some of these ladies had complained. For instance, the lady Wahoo, Starlet, she was called not Wahoo, she was called Starlet. Starlet, actually, when she was unalived, that is when they found this guy called John Matara, was a repeat offender. He was a serial offender. He would, in Nakuru and other parts of Kenya, he would get these ladies, molest them, and harm them. Some of them survived, but they have severe physical and even psychological injuries as a result of the mishandling of this guy. So you're looking at a situation, and then he was also extorting them. You take all their money and borrow money of their, all the borrowing platforms, they would just sort of leave them these women in such serious debt, and in that type of situation, if the police had taken the report seriously, because one of the victims of John Matara said, I got tired of going to the police station. I complained and I said. So when this guy came out and he was arrested, I think these ladies, this is now where the role of the media could be seen in prevention. They showed his image and they went to the police, because even the police made an announcement, said, do you know anything about this fellow? Come. So all these women who had been harmed in the past by this lady, they went back to the police station. So this fellow is facing multiple charges. He's seen as a serial sexual offender, is a serial, and in this particular case, he unalived somebody. And I think the suspected cases of other victims of his cruelty and his violence. So if the information is received well, if it is processed well, if it analyzed well, it can actually be a very powerful prevention tool. And we need the police to take those complaints seriously. That even a threat doesn't even have to be an actual physical, even the threat, because I remember there was a time, even a threat, and the police would go and call the person who's threatening to the police station, or go and look for them and warn them that we have this report in the police station, and if we hear anything has happened, the next time we're going to arrest you. So that used to happen, and it seems it's not happening now. And again, the issue again that could be challenging the police, who are supposed to be doing this work, is their numbers. In 2004, 2005, there was one policeman for over 50,000 Kenyans, and that was about 10 years ago. Now the ratio could be even worse. So, and yet, by the way, the irony here is that we are exporting police officers to Haiti. Yeah, and yet we don't have enough police officers here. So there's that issue. So what would we do? I think she should persist and maybe go to FIDA, get an advocate there to accompany her to the police station, because she needs to get out of that space, because it's dangerous. The strangling, those people who talk about the steps, about the red flags, the strangling, the next time it will not to be, the result will be really, really bad. And strangling is like one of the really extreme actions of violence, because it's like a preemptive action. In fact, that intimidation, she's just seeing, maybe she's seeing death right there, and she needs to leave. But she needs to leave in such a strategic way that maybe the best thing for her is really to go and do what, and talk to a lawyer, talk to FIDA, go to FIDA, tell them the story, and they'll know how to respond in such a way that you'll be kept safe, because this is quite a dangerous time for her.
That's very good advice. Thank you, Susan. Definitely. That's definitely what we're going to do. Yeah. That makes sense.
The other thing is the children. The children, she needs to watch out, because depending on the type of male you're talking about, and I think this could be a very controlling person, he could harm the children to get at her.
Yes, this is my concern. This is definitely my concern. Yeah.
She should not leave them there.
About the safety of the children. Yeah.
She should not leave them there. She needs to live with them. She needs to get them out of that place because we have many cases. We remember the case of the Nyanyuki case,
Yes.
of
Yes.
the Siambua case where we had
Yes.
familicide. Exactly
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
The when somebody who's very controlling feels they're losing control, the tendency is to they could easily just decide just to do away with the whole family,
Yeah.
and sometimes even themselves at the end. So, and it's
Yeah.
not right for any other human being to do something like that. So I
Mhm.
think she
Yeah.
should leave her children. This is a man who has shown violent tendencies, and this is a man who's shown, from what you're saying, controlling behavior. So the potential, and I think those children are at high risk. They're at high risk, and she needs to move out with all of them. Yeah, that will be my advice in that situation. But
I
of
hope you
course, she
guys
has to
have
do it
heard from. I
strategically.
hope you guys have heard from Susan, because that is like, free legal advice right there. Thank you very much, Susan. Do appreciate that. You know, yes, that's free legal advice for me. And anyone who is undergoing any sort of like gender-based violence in their home can listen to Susan and say, can get up and go to FIDA, which is the Federation of Kenyan Lawyers, who offer pro bono services to women. But you see, I've been there, I've been to that place. I haven't been very impressed. I've been there before. I think I told you that before when I went with my whole list of femicide cases. But I've never actually gone there with an actual victim of femicide, not femicide, of GBV. I've never been there with a victim of GBV. So let's go see. Let me go see and see what happens. But what about if they say that they don't have the funding, they don't have the money, they're underfunded, they can't take this case forward? But I don't want us to stay too long in this GBV and femicide. I think we need to revert back to the topic, which is about impunity, corruption, and undemocratic principles. It's all part of it. Yes, all this is part of it. But on the other hand, we also have some other interesting information to interesting stories to discuss. Like, for example, this Susan, can we move forward and talk about? And thank you very much again for the advice. Can we move forward and talk about why is our president so furious with Kenyans about the Adani deal, the Adani takeover of the airport, the fact that it fell through? Why is he so furious about the fact that Kenyans don't want to support the housing project? Why is he so furious about the fact that Kenyans don't agree and don't want to support Shah Schiff? You know, the why why is he furious about it? In my view, let me give you guys my view about this whole thing. I actually believe that all of this emotive behavior of leaders is very unpresidential. It's very, this emotional behavior doesn't look like leadership to me. What about you, Susan? What do you think? It doesn't, it's not becoming of leadership, because even in the African context, most people who are leaders in the African context say little and do much. Let me tell you what looks like real leadership is where you hardly ever hear the president of Tanzania say a word, but every other 3 months, 2 months, you hear a major event, a major positive thing happening in Tanzania. Or you hear somebody like Traore or Burkina Faso, and you'll see what he has done. Like now, Burkina Faso have actually they've achieved a really high rate of, what do we say, a really high rate of agricultural production, very, very high rate, just because of mechanization. Yeah, and giving people access to tools and to land, giving the youth access to tools and to land. So their harvest is huge. They've even put together a new, I think it's a $2 million plant, tomato processing plant. This is what you hear. You hardly hear the leaders speak. When they speak sense, not nonsense. They speak
Yes.
sense, and they are always talking about what they are doing, and it's tangible, credible. You can count it. You can go there. You can go to the tomato factory. You can see it's there. You can see the harvest. You can see all those tractors that came in, thousands of tractors that he brought into the country. Why is it that our leaders are so interested in talking, opening their mouth and just talking? That's why I believe sincerely that they're reading a script. It's like a script.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
feels like they're in a play, as if they're the National Theatre. We should go to the National Theatre and see scene one, opening scene one. This is what you're going to say now. Now be annoyed for the next 3 weeks. You be annoyed as we do this in the background. Okay? Get annoyed with
Yeah.
the population, drive up the emotion, rev up the emotion of the crowd. Now, make sure, do a handshake with Uhuru, get his brother into a CS position or whatever they're going to do crazy things to make Kenyans get really upset. And then, meanwhile, in the meantime, we will have been mining these particular stones in a specific place and ship them out of the country and have earned our money. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It just feels like,
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know.
You're asking, is it a
What am I saying to you?
diversionary tactic? You're saying,
Very
is
diversionary.
it a diversionary tactic? But I think maybe let's go back a little bit. Don't forget that people like our current president and maybe several other politicians were there pre-2010 constitution. So they were politicians under the old dispensation, where we sort of had like a really imperial presidency, and that's what they saw. The Moi Moi, Kenyatta won. Moi, we had the imperial presidency. Also, they were operating under the old constitution, and don't forget this one was the one we're operating under now was promulgated in 2010. So the way the president used to interact with people then was very different from the way our constitution facilitates the way they're supposed to interact. So being imperial, being my way or the highway doesn't work. And so the citizens have a special role to check. And that's why public participation is such an essential tenet in our constitution. So these are some of the things. And then, of course, the other thing is the underlying reason. And could it be that they have seen an opportunity to make money, an opportunity to create wealth for individuals, an opportunity to expand your personal kingdom at the expense of the nation? Is it an opportunity for you to spread some networks or bring some people in and all that? And so if you see all these schemes, all these things they're talking about, are, you can see there's a lot of money that's supposed to be invested in them. About the cows, I saw this little caption. This lady says, "My cow, my choice." My cow is I can choose whether or not it is going to be vaccinated because of
Vaccinated.
issues
Yes, the Bill Gates thing. The Bill Gates thing.
yeah, and even what makes us even more concerned was that they had like special dispensation for them to come in, but the High Court reversed all that. They were given some really special privileges, which didn't make any sense at all. So I think
Impunity.
that's
He
what we're
sought
dealing.
impunity.
Yes,
Yes.
it's
Mhm.
impunity as it's like misuse of power and abuse of power,
Mhm.
because you
Mhm.
want to force something down, and
Mhm.
yet the constitution says you must handle things in this certain way. You cannot just make whatever decisions.
Mhm.
For instance, like the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Amendment Bill. There's an amendment bill that the Parliament were discussing, and one of the things they want to do is to exclude procurement officers from persecution. And we know that is an avenue. We know a lot of the corruption, a lot of the missing funds and all that gets lost through the procurement process. And yet they want to give them some sort of protection so they're not liable to persecution. To prosecution, not persecution, to prosecution as procurement officers. But we know they're one of the main avenues through which money is siphoned in the wrong direction, with all their wheeling and dealing and stuff like that. So you can see the goodwill of the parliament itself is put into question by their wanting to pass certain bills which contravene, one, the constitution, and two, actually contravene, they're like corrupt. You can just read corruption, potential for corruption, integrity issues there. You can see all those things, and they're in that pool. So I think the president is annoyed because the public has mobilized themselves. So they're speaking up as they should, as is allowed by the Constitution, against things they don't trust or understand. And the history of activities has shown that we need to interrogate things further when we're just told something. So, for instance, this SHA deal, it's in the newspapers, the headlines yesterday, and we're talking about corruption now and impunity. So the Adani linked, it was this is the headlines of today's Nation. Adani linked Shah hospital system fails. So what happened? Because this system failed, they brought in a fourth vendor called Savannah something, who are supposed to be using their billing. They're supposed to be their portal. They're providing a portal for the billing from the private hospitals. But the Wananchi, the procurement process was not followed on this. So they're saying, okay, maybe it's working, but were the processes followed? And the amount of money that is likely to be spent now on this fourth vendor is in the billions, is 1 billion. According to the newspaper, it says 1 billion, amount that new partner is expected to be paid for the claims processing portal. And don't forget, already it was 104 billion for the other three. And these are the three organizations that are the consortium of three that is supposed to be running the integrated health management system. One is Safaricom, one is Apiero, and the other one is called, I've forgotten its name, but there were three, and now they've brought in a fourth one. So the question is, with such a big deal and such a big move, how come it was done secretly and it was not made public? So this has come to light, that actually the private hospitals are benefiting from a newly brought in, and the cost to us, the cost to the government, the cost to Kenyans is 1 billion shillings. So that is impunity. The potential for corruption is so high, because we are, and especially now in the face of the cries of Kenyans that we are being overtaxed, that so much of the money, especially those who are in formal employment, their money is deducted from source. They don't even see it. It's just deducted and you get your few shillings. Remember, we talked about the doctors where they're taking 40,000.
Mhm.
You're
Mhm.
muted. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Let me also, because you talked about Savannah and nobody knows really what a lot of people don't know anything about it. Yeah. Let me
Yeah.
see if I can
Yeah.
play something. I found something on it. Let me
Yeah.
see if I can play it just to help people to understand what it is. Yeah. Clinker
It's
Savannah.
called Savannah
Can you
Informatics.
say, yeah, it's on, Susan, it's on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Released. Data was freed by the magistrate's court following a High Court order that stopped his detention and prosecution. Data spent the weekend in custody despite the High Court order, which was issued last Friday. Magistrate Gilbert Shikwe deferred the bail ruling and ordered the matter to be mentioned on January 30th, 2025. Benson Data was on Friday charged with defrauding Absa Bank over 5 billion shillings. Data denied 8 counts, among them conspiracy to commit a felony, obtaining execution over security by false pretenses, and altering false documents.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that's basically he's a questionable character already. So if he's one of those people who are involved in the procurement of our national health insurance or our social health insurance fund, then or managing it, is it managing the payments or procuring services on behalf of the private sector? Then that's a question. Why is it that the Kenya government seem to be working with shady characters like these ones? Defrauding Absa Bank? Are you serious? Let me play something else, Susan. One sec. It's gonna be playing. Let me warn you in advance. I want to share my screen again and hope that it's going to play corruption. I hope it's going to play. Yeah.
Our boys, even at JKUAT or University of Nairobi, can get this thing done in one day. But we don't want to. So we go to the Venezuelans and we look for people, we procure ballot papers from Europe and so on. We can print money in Raraka, but we must print ballots in Europe. It's a circus. And so Kenyans have to wake up to a certain level of anger and ask CJ, how long are we going to endure this nonsense? I mean, what's the difference? If you tell the truth, you are a true person. If you tell lies, you're a liar. And Ruto is a liar.
I don't think that's the one I wanted to play. But anyway, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. The thing is, it's Ruben Kigame, and he was one of the, what was he? He had ran for the presidency, and in the end, he wasn't
Yeah.
actually allowed. Yeah.
Yeah.
He wasn't, he was taken
Mhm.
off the ballot. He was taken off the ballots, and he wasn't allowed to run for presidency. And he's blind. He's a person living with disability. He's blind. But
Yeah.
believe me, he can see farther than you and I who can see. You know, those of us who can see. I think that sometimes I think that people living with disability, there are parts of their bodies that, compensate so much to the point where they see they see through their ears, listening to people, judging, even the environment, the energy that you bring in to a blind person, they can tell already immediately what energy is approaching them. I tell you, I really believe that it's unfortunate. Basically, he was talking about the corruption, the fact that Kenya has become such a corrupt country, such a corrupt place, and there's nothing worse than living under corruption. There's nothing worse than that, because you can't get any services delivered honestly. Yeah, you can't be an honest person in a corrupt environment. It's almost impossible. They make it impossible. And I believe that if you get into politics and you're straight and you go into politics with corrupt people, you will have to be corrupted just to keep safe. You have to buy your security by being corrupt, by joining them. Otherwise, if you're seen, it's just like those people, for example, nothing against people who drink. But if you're a teetotaler around friends who like to drink, if you don't drink, then you become the outcast. Yeah. So that's the same thing in the political arena. That if you are straight in the political arena, you will face it from these people, and they can come after you because they know that you're going to expose them. You're a potential. They think or they imagine that you might expose them just because they themselves have corrupt, behavior. They're and
Yeah.
they're used to impunity. Yeah. I tell you, it's such a horrible. That's one of the things that makes a lot of people. We hear people describe Kenya as this beautiful country with great weather, beautiful climate, wonderful people, good food, but so corrupt. So the question is, why is it that there's so many Kenyans that are living outside the country? Why? Why are Kenyans running away from the country? Why are Kenyans taking off? It's because of corruption. That corruption environment, it's actually like, it's a disease. It's evil. It's disease. So when you go to some of these other countries, even if there is grand corruption, it's difficult to see it on a daily basis. The law works. So for example, if you go to the UK or the US, yes, there is corruption on a very grand scale, but on your daily life, you're not going to have to experience corruption. Like where you park your car, you don't have to go and tip somebody so that they don't take your windshield. Your mirror, your side mirror. Yeah, you don't have all these parking boys that you have to, give a bribe to. If your power is cut off, you don't have to keep on calling the power people and giving this one person a call so that you can give him a bribe so that he can report so that your electricity can be put back on. Do you understand? It is a very burdensome. Corruption is a very burdensome and very expensive affair. So I think that
Yeah.
living under impunity and corruption and undemocratic rule is one of the most difficult things for any human. It's a difficult thing. And I believe it's the one that actually causes people to migrate, to leave their countries. So we should stem corruption. We should stem impunity and corruption and go back to the original principles
Yeah.
of integrity.
In fact,
Integrity. Yeah. Susan, are you hanging there? Can you hear me? Hi, Susan. Are you back?
yeah.
You're back.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, now I can hear you. You
Yeah.
had a hang for yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I was just going to comment on the this Savannah Informatics, a little bit about them. I'm just looking at the newspaper here. They were brought in to help Apero Limited, which was supposed to Apero, let's say, that was supposed to be, which was tasked with providing the e-claims portal. So Savannah Informatics stepped in to stabilize the system. And then what we find out about it is that when we look at the people involved in this, providing this the services for the integrated healthcare management system under the SHIF and SHA, we find that Apero, which is the largest shareholder in the Safaricom SHA consortium, has business links to Adani Group. And we know that Gatabaki is actually a shareholder in that Apero. And we know Gatabaki is the wife of David Day. And then we have David D. And then we have, after Savannah Informatics was registered, it provides digital healthcare solutions, and it was incorporated in January 2013. So there's a company called Noble Venture Holdings, which was incorporated in 2019, which is the biggest shareholder in Savannah Informatics. Now, this is where the web starts, okay? And then from there, we have a Noble Venture is owned by 3 doctors. And then we have an accountant. Then we have another company called Otec Investments that owns some shares in Savannah. And then we have a group of people who are shareholders under that. Then we have a group called Savannah Informatics Employee Share Ownership Trust, which also owns share in Savannah. And then we have Octamed Healthcare Services Limited, which owns some shares there. And the records were not available from the registrar of business. And then, things like that. So there's a web of companies and people that we'll have to trace now to really understand who is Savannah, so there are all these shell companies, and these are the type of things that bring into question, that raise questions on impunity and corruption, because even the original shareholders of when they did an analysis, I saw it, I think it was on Citizen, where they tried to trace all the companies that were involved in this integrated healthcare management system, the Apero and then a company is you have 3 names there, and then you go to the other company which is there, and you find an overlap between these names, and then there's a company, and then there's a link here, and then there's a link there, and then that's when you realize you're in a spider web. You're going down a rabbit hole with some of these issues, which would concern which would be concerning for all of us, that we can't really be able to put our finger on who owns this company, who exactly owns this company.
And this is why it begs the question, why is our president so angry with Kenyans and saying that we are unpatriotic because we question the Shift Shah, that we question all of this, what you call spiderweb, because corruption operates in a convoluted web, in a convoluted web. Basically, it operates best in opaqueness as opposed to transparency, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
True. Yes.
That's the thing. And that's the thing. The Kenyans are just asking for transparency. Kenyans are begging for transparency. But that is impossible to deliver. It's impossible because it is a web. And yet they want us to be transparent. They want Kenyans to be transparent with their income, with their taxes, but they don't want to be transparent with how those taxes are going to be used and on who and who is involved. Because in some cases, there are legal issues there. And that's the reason why Kenyans are even asking the what's her name, Martha Koome, to step down. They want her to step down because it's as if she is in bed with the executive, because she's not she's not insisting on transparency. She's not protecting Kenyans. She's not protecting the Constitution. She's supposed to defend the Constitution and ensure transparency and ensure the legal that procurement is done in a legal manner. That the law is followed to the T. And I saw somewhere. It's not us who are saying that Martha Koome should step down, the Chief Justice, but she is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. In fact, she's a Chief Justice generally, isn't she? Yeah. So it's just unfortunate. It's just really unfortunate. Our country, today's topic is not nice. Impunity, corruption, and undemocratic principles. Unfortunately, we have learned to live with this, to normalize it, to think it's okay. But at some point, we citizens have to say no, to this whole thing. So I think we need to wind up, Susan.
Some stats before we go.
Oh, you have some stats. Yeah, we need to wind up in the next 10 minutes. Yeah, I'm just giving you 10 minutes.
Yeah, on corruption. So I was looking at the corruption index. Transparency International have a corruption perceptions index, which they did 2023. Kenya scored at 31, which is not a very good score, because very corrupt is 0 and very clean is 100. So we were below even 50%, so that was 31. Our ranking is 126 out of 180 countries. So the aim of this report was to to establish the status and perception on corruption. There's a report now by the National Ethics and Corruption Survey. It was a survey that was done in 2023 by the National Ethics and Corruption Commission. And this survey of 2023 is aimed at establishing the status and perception on corruption in Kenya. And the sample size, just for those who would be interested, 5,100 respondents who are over 18 years in all 47 counties. So some of the findings were that 57.3% of those of the respondents perceived corruption to be high. And the main reason they gave was the high cost of living. So people are trying to make extra income because they're not earning enough. And then 44.7% view that corruption prevalence is increasing. And the reasons they gave was the high cost of living, increase in corruption case reports, no action taken to reduce corruption cases. And the other third point is 37.9% were optimistic that corruption would decrease in the 1 year period, while 29% were pessimistic. They thought it was going to increase. And the most corrupt ministries, according to the respondents, was the Ministry of Interior. It's the one that doesn't have a CS right now.
Susan, you said 37.9% believe that corruption will decrease, and 29%, that's like about 30%. So let's say 40 plus 30. So what about the other 30%? Or they had no views?
I think, no, this was just the findings which are essential. Like they probably had no views or whatever. Mixed.
Yeah.
So the corrupt ministries.
Those statistics don't mean anything to me, really. They really don't. Because who did they interview? Who did they interview in all those 47 counties? Huh?
Yeah, I mean, the sample size, they said it was representative.
Where are these surveys? They talk about these surveys. Who actually conducted the survey? Sorry to say. Let's just find out.
It was the National Ethics, National Ethics and Corruption Survey.
And Anti-Corruption
and
Commission.
Corruption Survey.
Oh, and Corruption Survey. By the government.
But it was commissioned by the Commission on the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission.
Exactly. So and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission should tell us specifically, which groups of people they actually invited to participate in this perception survey. Where they start to say, because they're reporting on themselves, they're saying that the majority of people believe that corruption will decrease. And the minority of and you see, they said 37.9%, that's about 40%, believe that they perceive that corruption is going to decrease. and
Yeah. In the
30%
next
believe that
1 year.
corruption will not decrease. I beg
Yeah.
to differ. I beg to differ. I want to
Yeah.
find one Kenyan right now who would say that in the next 2 years, corruption is going to decrease. This is why I'm trying to say, you know that I'm an evaluator, man. I'm not going to take, I don't take this data at face value. You have to look at the sponsor
Yeah.
of the data, the sponsor of the survey, and the reason why they would come up with these kinds of data. What for? It's because
Yeah.
it's a sort of impunity that they themselves can evaluate themselves, that they can conduct these surveys. These surveys need to be
Yeah.
done by what do we say? An unaffiliated
An
body.
independent. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
independent
Yeah.
body like private sector. It should be even a
Yeah.
PPP. Here's an opportunity for a PPP. Yeah,
Yeah.
public-private partnership between the government and people. What do you mean the ethic as the corruption commission? Who in their right mind in Kenya thinks that corruption is coming down right now? Especially with, and then
Yeah.
they say
Well.
that it's because of the cost of living. No, it's not because of the cost of living. That's not the reason why we have corruption. It's because people can be corrupt. It's because people are greedy. And that word has been used a lot to describe our leadership, people in, the CSs, PSs, whatever, whoever. Greed.
Yeah.
Greed is a
Mm-hmm.
big, big problem in Kenya. People wanting to live beyond their means. That's why
Yeah.
there's corruption.
I
Yeah.
I
And
just
also
thought. I
because
thought.
of lack of service delivery by the government. So competition for the little service that there is that's available,
Yeah.
whether it's school
Mm-hmm.
admissions, whether it's hospital to see a doctor, whatever its situation, that's the reason why. Because there's a sense of scarcity. There's a scarcity mindset in Kenya, that if you want a service, then you have to be corrupt. For example, you want your child has graduated from university, you want them to get a job. So what they'll tell you is you pay a little bit of money and we'll give them an internship somewhere. So you want to say that's because of cost of living? That's not because of cost of living. No.
No. They were
So
saying.
yeah.
They were saying that majority said that. These are the
Yes.
responses of the
No,
respondents.
no.
So you can.
Corruption adds to the cost of living, actually.
Yes, it
Corruption
does.
is
Yeah.
expensive. It adds to the cost
Yeah.
of living. So you can't say that I'm bribing because I'm broke. No. You're bribing because
Yeah.
you want to get a service. That's what it is. Because there's no other way
Yeah.
to get this service. Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
thought let me just share some information
Sorry,
because
those statistics,
it's
yeah, they get
interesting.
me a little bit wound
Yeah.
up. Sorry about that.
No, I think the information is useful because it's one thing, like you said, of course, you'd have to do maybe triangulate it against other surveys that have been done. But this particular one was commissioned by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. And they said some of the most corrupt ministries are the Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Transport. And then the government departments that are most prone to corruption are police, which are 60.6%. And then we have immigration and then registrar of persons. And county level corrupt prone, county health services at the highest, transport and trade development and regulation. And then the most prevalent forms of unethical practices witnessed, bribery was the highest at 44%, delay in service provision, 16.2%, and abuse of office, 6.6%. And then the areas where the bribery was being used, registration of business, getting a TSC number, relief, food, water, access to it, tenders, registration and transfer of motor vehicles, buildings, educational services, driving license, CDF funds, agricultural extension services. This is where the service sector where bribery is prevalent. When it comes to institutions, the county health department is right up there. NTSA, these are the guys of the road and transport, and then county commissioners, public service commission, public service boards, counties with the highest bribe for services: Nyamira, Baringo, Siaya, Bungoma, Turkana. So these are the type of figures we're talking about. What are the impacts they notice? They try to find out more likely to receive service. And this is what you were talking about earlier, about how it affects the order of things, because you've bribed. So you are able to get services ahead of somebody who may have applied earlier than you. That's inequity, that is inefficiency, you breaching the confidence of the wananchi in that institution, its effectiveness. It's affecting fairness in access to services, and many, many other things that would tell you that the business space or the area is actually has a very negative impact on what wananchi are trying to do in their ordinary lives. So they're saying the average size of bribe increased in 2022 from about 7,000 shillings, that's 6,865, to about 12,000 shillings in 2023, which is almost double. Yeah, so I just thought those stats were interesting. Definitely the reasons why people think, the inflation, why they think people take bribes. Actually, I also agree with you. I think it is really about greed. It is really about greed, because some of these people who are taking these bribes really don't, they have so much money already. They have so much money already and they still take bribes. We have not talked about that really high level bribe. We're talking about at ministry level, at county level. So, but we do know that, there could be situations where we could suspect money is getting lost. Remember when we talked about the Ketraco before it was cancelled, and we talked about the difference between what the Adani deal was going to get and compared it with an earlier project that was done for a longer distance. And the Adani deal were getting 7 times, what the other ones were getting. So, yeah, so you can continue. There's a noise here. I wanted to pass. Mute. Unmute, Queen Mo. Can't hear you.
You said you're hearing a noise.
I'm saying, yeah, on my side, I can hear a noise. So I just wanted you to continue. Yeah. And you were muted. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I was looking for videos for you, and actually I think I found one, but we'll try to see whether, we can show you some videos of this thing, because it's unfortunate, corruption is a big problem, not just in Kenya, it's all over the world. And the worst thing about it is when, for example, the donor organizations decide to absolve themselves from corruption. That is a big problem, because I'll tell you what, it doesn't look like corruption, but it really is. When you decide as a donor that you're going to give money or lend money to a country that cannot repay its debt. Yeah, it's a big problem. It's a big problem. And then come back later to blame the country for taking on that debt. You give them the money and then you come back and you blame them for taking it. That is also corruption. It's hypocritical, it's corruption, it's greed, it's control, it's many things. So what I want to say is, I wanted to share with you guys something like, information about like what's happening out there, because in Kenya, corruption is one of the things that we've had to bear since the Moi days. We would say, even maybe from Kenyatta. I was probably too young to remember. But, during the Moi era, 24 years of Moi rule, Kenya was just a difficult place to stay, a difficult country to live in. When I was younger, I remember the corruption, that's where it started. That is where, for once, you would become a professional. You're a professional, and with your qualifications, you are skipped for somebody who has no skills whatsoever. You have seen the situation in the cabinet right now. They seem to be completely unable to exercise, to do. For example, like people don't get jobs on merit anymore. That seems to have gone away. Yeah, people get jobs based on who they know in our country of Kenya, and then at the same time they say that Kenya is training young people so that they can go and work outside the country, We're busy looking for jobs for qualified Kenyans, but we won't employ them in our country because they're not our relative. Because they're not our relative. If you happen to have a position, a high-ranking position in the government or high-ranking position anywhere, you would leave, instead of hiring somebody based on their qualification and merit to take your company forward or to take your government or department forward, you look for someone within, you try to reduce the burden, your cost of living burden, by hiring one of your relatives who is unemployed and get them trained to the point where they get trained in-house to the point where they can deliver. And what does that do? That sets us back so many years behind. And yet we're training our young people to go and get jobs abroad. That is the highest level of corruption and impunity and undemocratic principle that we are exercising in our country. Yeah, it's something that we should be ashamed of. We should be really ashamed of that. And that's another thing. They say the fear is gone. The shame is gone too. Yeah, people don't care. They're like, okay, so it doesn't really matter. But actually, to be honest, it does matter, because in the end, one has to pay the price. One pays the price, because Kenya is now set back. You see, right now, our president has actually admitted that Tanzania is doing better. Tanzania is doing better in terms of its economy, in terms of its economic progress compared to Kenya. Why? Why is that? Because Tanzania is not on the same level in corruption as Kenya. So it has attracted all the investors that ran away from our securities exchange. They're in Tanzania. They're in Botswana. They've run away from Kenya. So our profile as a country is coming down. And if you think it's not going to affect you and I, believe me, it does. When you and I apply for jobs anywhere in the world and they rate you as a Kenyan, the first thing, what do they think of? Corruption. This one is a corrupt person. We have to check their qualifications. Do they really, let's check their CV. So if a person from our country and a person from Botswana or Tanzania applies for the same job with the same qualifications, who do you think they're going to pick? They're not going to pick the Kenyan. They won't. They'll look for the country that is lower ranking in terms of corruption indices. They will. So it impacts us. It impacts those people's children. Those politicians are not very smart. They need to understand that this whole thing is going to be, the sour grapes will be eaten by their children. Because those children, they will educate their children abroad, spend a lot of money, do everything, and in the end, their children will be staying at home because they won't be employable, because they come from a corrupt country. Yeah. A country that has a reputation of being corrupt. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very sad state of affairs that we could rank so high. 126 out of 180. Yeah, with a score of 31, it's certainly something that needs to be checked. It's actually, it is, an assault on our democracy. The corruption and the impunity is actually an assault to our democratic institutions. You heard them talking about regime policing, where the police are not independent, but they're rather following dancing to the tune of somebody else. And that's why we would have things happening that will tell you that there's misuse of power. And remember, the three categories I talked about that they measured includes, it's not just about bribery, it's actually about abuse of office and a delay in service provision. Those are actually forms of corruption. And for the judiciary, this is where they're facing the music. This is where Martha Koome is getting into problems, because they're saying that justice denied, justice delayed is justice denied. And so they're saying that there's a huge backlog. Instead of people being judicial officers being in the courts, they're out at conferences and whatever, getting what they were saying. I'm just repeating what I heard, per diems. And instead of coming and sitting in court, and what is happening, you come to court, the court is not sitting. You have not been given any advance warning. Your witnesses have traveled long distances and come all that way, and then the court is not sitting. And the other thing is the court adjourns the matter. It's been adjourned, and maybe the witnesses are there, maybe it's a pressing issue or whatever it is. So then they're coming back, the judiciary coming back. Actually, it's more serious than that. We're not being given sufficient funds. There's no investment in the judiciary. This third arm of government, the judiciary, they're getting less than the money that they need to hire judges. They've not been able to hire enough magistrates or judges. And truth be told, is that the issue of backlog of cases is a historical problem. It has been there for a long time. I remember many years ago, to deal with the backlog of cases, they got what they were calling commissioners of assize. So they appointed a selection of like senior advocates to sit in court, in the High Court, to try and reduce the backlog of certain cases, depending on their area of preference. So we would appear before commissioners of assize. So maybe these are some of the strategies they need to do. And one of the things the judiciary is saying they're trying to do to address this backlog, which is causing people to say that there's unethical, they're calling them unethical practices, that delay in service provision, is to try and remove some of the cases from coming to court, like the traffic cases, the drunk and disorderly. And if you ever go to court, you'll find that it's true, you go to the magistrates' courts, not the High Court, but the magistrates' courts, and the first, so long, the period, maybe the first hour, is spent listening to, people who have been brought up in groups of 10 for being drunk and disorderly. And that could be something where, they're fined directly, even the traffic offenses. Those are other things where you don't really need to come to court. If, for instance, you parked an illegal parking or something like that, and you should be able to plead guilty, and then you're fined and you pay. So the courts are also complaining that they're having a lot of petty cases, and which is bringing the backlog. So the reason why I brought that in is that
and I believe those guys who came to court, Susan, are the ones who refused to bribe the police officers. Yeah, they said no,
yes,
I don't, or they didn't have the money to bribe.
Yeah, yes,
at the point of arrest.
That's very true. Yeah, yeah, that's very true. I mean, again, look at the protesters who were arrested yesterday. Some of them, I mean, what was that about? What are they going to say they did? And none of them was carrying a placard saying Ruto must go. Actually, yesterday's protest was very focused. There were no placards saying Ruto must go, at least the ones I saw. They were just like,
it was femicide must go, and you will be arrested for saying that in Kenya. Crazy. Yeah.
There was no must go. There was no must go.
Let me read a comment by one of our viewers, because you like to listen to these. This is Sophia Naiseko. She says, Africa exports more laundered funds than it receives in foreign aid. This is by Justice Richard Galston. Africa exports more laundered funds than it receives in foreign aid. It's true. We actually put our money away in, foreign bank accounts, and we launder it away much more than we ever receive in food, in aid. That's true. That's very, very true. That's very, very true. Yeah. Where's the lie there? There's no lie. Ameongea ukweli kabisa.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. Yeah. Let me have an exportation.
Okay, go ahead, Susan. I wanted to play something from if I can get it. If I can get it and play it. Let me just play here. Yeah. Let me see if I can play that for you.
Go and sit in the budget committee or sit in the transport committee. If you are not the chair or vice, be very nice to the chair and the vice. Make sure you run to status to go and see the president. Make sure that you're actually screaming out there and saying the government is wonderful, the president is, other than Jesus, is the one, blah, blah, blah. So that the next meeting you have with him, you tell him, boss, najua hii mambo ya barabara tulikuwa tunaongea. Anasema, we, kuja hapa, angalia maneno huyu jamaa anasema ambia nani atengenezee hiyo vitu iende huko kwake. So you receive 100 million worth of roads, which then you just go and do 2. The remaining, you organize all the paperwork, do the transaction, make sure even the tractor doesn't step there, and you grease out everybody. The engineer could ask Kidogo, the oversight guy could ask Kidogo, your team. If you're an MP, the group that you work with, they share the cash. Kidogo too. Sometimes they fight over it. Kidogo too. Then you are left with that. You'll keep about 70, 80 million. So you chill out until next year. You do another deal like that. Or if you're smart, you then now look for, now since you've been given the one for roads, now you look for water. You know, water cannot be traced because the pipes are put under. Yeah, so you look for one like this, which has been budgeted for. You talk to the minister. If possible, you get the PS because he's the one who's the AIE holder. Then you negotiate. You say, now, there's like a place called Nyakyogiro, mix, you roll it out to this, and then it says, yes, so what can we do? You put this one for 250. No. I think we can manage 150. So you go and do water and you spend about 20 million. The rest, the documentation is made, everything runs around. Sooner or later, the team around that money, you see guys buying new cars, you see a guy building a house which is maybe 9 bedrooms and many other perks.
That is it.
That is how the system works. So number one, the reason why you see everybody running to government is because the loot. Government is the largest IPO.
IPO, that's true.
It is the largest IPO. 4 trillion is not a joke.
Is that Onyonka? Is that Senator Onyonka?
I think so.
Sounds like him. And
Yeah.
it's really unfortunate.
Talking about
It's
the convoluted process and the, no integrity, zero integrity. And they're not ashamed. They're not ashamed. You go and budget for a road, you decide, oh, let me go and see somebody, and then you just, that 100 million, where is it? The one, what happened to that road? Go see about that road. That's not the way to do development. We don't do development like that. We will never develop at that rate, ever. As our country, it will take us so long to get from point A to point B. And we have such potential. We have such potential as a country, because if you look at, for example, not even as a country, as a continent of Africa, we have such a young population. If you go outside there, like, for example, for people who have lived outside, like in the so-called developed world, Western world, like Americas, the Europes, whatever, you go outside, majority of the people are over the age of 40. And they're strolling along. They're way past their years of energy. Here in Kenya, you see groups and groups, millions of young people, so much energy. We have huge potential. And we're not using it just because of corruption. Corruption steals that potential from young people in Africa. And this is very painful because, you see, one only has a chance to live once. One only has one chance to live in this and to make a difference. And everybody who is born usually comes with a goal to do something, to be something, to contribute something to the environment, to contribute, And if you're denied that opportunity, that becomes really sad. Let me see. Sophia is also saying, yes, that's Senator Onyonka. Yes, thank you. Sophia is definitely into politics, that one. She knows exactly who that is. Yeah. Thank you, Sophia, with us this late in the game. Tomorrow is a public holiday. I hope everybody's what day is it tomorrow, Susan? Do you know? Is it Independence Day?
Jamhuri Day. Jamhuri Day. Yeah, our Day of Independence. 1963.
Are we independent?
12th December 1963. So we are 61. We're 61. Kenya is 61. I was just wanting to reflect back to what we talked about.
And hobbling along. And Sophia is still saying here that it's true. As the Western Asia is quickly aging, Africa's youth is bulging and really, is bulging and scaring leaders because these leaders are visionless. They have no vision. Can you imagine? Sometimes I think to myself and I say, gosh, can you imagine being a wife of one of those guys? a wife or a husband, or especially being a wife. Can you imagine being a wife of a Kenyan, can we call them National Assembly person? Can you imagine? Me, I can't. I'm sorry to say. Because to me, they are very dumb. They're not smart. They're not intelligent. For me, intelligence is very important. It's more important than cash, more important than money. To have a brain, to have a mind, to be able to, I would love to, I can see myself as old as I am as Traore's wife, happily, even if it's the 60th wife, it's okay, because that man's brain, it thinks, you want to be associated to somebody who's going somewhere. And I'm just joking because Traore is like my son. So no, I wouldn't, but what I'm saying is a woman should be, women, as women also, we should try to influence our men not to go out there and embarrass us with their greed and their lack of intelligence and lack of vision. Because it goes to show, it reflects back into the home. And this is the reason why so many homes are just not making it, because of lack of vision. They say what? A person dies for lack of vision. Yeah. Lack of vision can actually be a death sentence right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, remember on Monday we were talking about the scorecard, the parliamentary scorecard.
Yes.
One of the items that came up was the Auditor General on the national government CDF, remember? And there were 15 MPs on red alert and 19 MPs on the run. And this all has to do with misuse and misapplication of funds and corruption and impunity and integrity issues. No MPs use the money to the satisfaction of the Auditor General, and 221 MPs out of 346, because we don't have 3 MPs present. So 221 out of 346 MPs have issues with the Auditor General. So you can see that
misuse of funds in their docket.
Yeah, and I think this ethics report that was done was really from the point of view of Wananchi, because the MPs are corrupt in a different sort of context, and you will find that the corruption is that they're being corrupted by certain people to do certain things. Although there was one line item about access to CDF, actually, there was corruption there. Education
the
also.
NGCDF is an example of impunity. The national government, what do they call it? Yeah, CDF.
Constituency Development Fund.
Development Fund. Yeah. So it actually, by the way, you'll start to notice that I'm not a night person. Law of diminishing returns, you know what I mean? But yeah, the NGCDF is already an example of impunity and corruption, because it was deemed to be what? To be unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. So why are they still giving out these funds? Why do MPs still have access to the NGCDF in Kenya? Why? Because they can then exercise control over their population, over their constituents. It's all about control. It's a very abusive relationship. These relationships we talk about here. It's a toxic relationship between MPs and their constituents. Yeah, that they'll call mama to come in for 2,000 shillings, 5,000 shillings, 15,000 shillings to pay this term school fees, and she'll come with a goat to give to the MP, or 3 chickens to give him to say thank you. And yet that money should be controlled by the governors in each of the counties. If the money had gone into the governors, if the money had gone into the counties, then the governors can probably, even with all that NGCDF money, they can probably even provide scholarships to so many children, if not to all of them. They can find a way, to try to get all the children into school. But if you give it to the MP who is supposed to be, Susan said that they have only 3 roles, which is what? To legislate, to represent, and what was the third one?
Oversight.
Yeah, to legislate and to oversight. Yes.
Oversight.
That's all.
Yeah. So
but no, they're not doing that. They're also controlling the funds. They're also acting as accountants and oh my goodness, they're acting as the money market, money market fund for their constituents, which is ridiculous, through the NGCDF. It's a cash
And I think
cow.
also, and I think also the governors were in problems also with the Auditor General because of utilization of funds, and some counties never used any of the money they had towards in the last quarter toward development, and one of them that scored really badly was Nairobi. We didn't use the money. None of the money that was released was utilized for development. And we remember there was a long squabble because there was this tensions between the governors and parliament and the release of monies, and they wanted, was it 400 billion, and eventually they were given 380 billion was supposed to be disbursed. But I remember listening to some program and said, well, we haven't seen the money yet. Again, also, when the government says we release this money, they're saying, the people on the ground are saying we haven't seen the money yet. The doctors were saying, well, they're saying they've released this money, but we haven't seen it yet. At Ministry of Education, because of the grade 9 crisis, they have to build classes. There are no classes, there are no teachers, there are no spaces there's no infrastructure to absorb the grade 9ers and to buy books and everything. So they were saying, oh, we have this amount of money, it will be released. So let's just hope some of these things happen rather than things being said to keep members of people quiet, members of the public quiet, and trying to placate us. But what I will say about the Kenyan population is we're quite well informed. And remember the issue of, you raised an issue, and I thought the example for where the nationals, the Kenyan citizens, were very alert to the fact that Adani was not a good guy, and they started warning the government long before. After this guy Nelson raised the red flag, Amenya raised the red flag about it, Kenyans found out more and more about Adani, that he had problems in other nations and stuff like that, and that Adani group was a questionable thing. So it was unfortunate that we find that action was only taken by the head of state when the indictment occurred in the US. And I believe there was more political pressure even from that level for him to change his mind, because the Kenyans had been talking, even giving examples and saying, and at the end he even ended up as insulting people and saying, some of you have never been to an airport, and stuff like. Remember, some of you at that airport you're talking about, you've not been there.
I saw some crazy videos on TikTok of older women, by the way, saying, I have in their language, in their shrubbing languages, who said that I have never been to the airport? I am now here. Some people actually travel to the airport to show that they have been to the airport. Did you see those TikToks? Women from the village, they decided they're going to the airport. Who said I have never been to this airport? I have been to this. So in other words, if you never even used the airport, never been there, you don't have a right to talk about it. So that means if something happens with the ports and that's in Mombasa, you've never been there, then you have no right to have an opinion. That's just crazy,
Lord,
yeah. And
Lord,
you see,
Lord,
in the era of high taxation in Kenya, with this impunity and corruption and democratic principles, where are we going? Where are we going? The government is hiking taxes, but they don't want to be transparent and accountable for how those taxes are used. It's just ridiculous.
I think economists say actually the taxes should be reduced in this current situation we are in.
Oh yeah,
they should be reduced, not increased, because now you're reducing our disposable income of the Kenyan people, so they're not able to buy things or say anything, or they're not able to purchase things. Some children are going to miss school. Food, electricity, people have to start compromising on this. The cost of electricity is going up. And all these other items which push things up, and even that story, I was listening to some analysts, and they're saying, look, the Kenya Kwanza government said they're going to reduce the cost of fuel, right? But the thing is, they said it is still not at the level it was when Kenya Kwanza took over, so it's still high.
Of course,
it's gone down.
And yet globally, it's gone down. Yeah. And when we complain, Kasongo anasema tuko na pepo chafu, according to Sophia.
Yeah. true. That's what we've been told. And
True,
you know,
Sophia.
I look.
We're being told that we're carrying negative spirits, evil spirits, for criticizing the government. I mean, that is unbelievable. I'm telling you, Adani has made us be called so many names. Like we're witchcraft people. We have been told
No,
off. But it's okay.
in
We
all
don't
those
mind because we know
cases.
what we were saying, Sophia. This whole thing is acted. It looks like an act. It looks like a big act. Somebody's reading from a script. Because actually, you'll actually see this happening all over the world. One president will say this, then another one will say the same thing in another country. Another one will say the same thing in another country, and you're like, they're reading from the same script. Same script. Let's raise the taxes. Same script. Femicide. Same script. Protesters being what do we say? Tear gassed. Same script. Let's do this now. Same script. They're all reading from one script. When it comes to the cows, injecting cows and cattle and chicken and fish and tagging all of them, same script. They're all reading from a script.
My cow, my choice. I wish I could get that caption.
What about my chicken
cow, my
and my egg? Until you have to trace the egg back. Oh, there's this lady on, oh my God, there's this lady on TikTok. I'd really like to find that video, but I'll do that for the next session since it's a bit late now. And we want to say thank you for those people who are watching us. Thank you. I still see 2 eyes up there and believe that could be Fia and Sophia. Oh, that's actually Sophia. And it's funny, we have 2 Fias in here. We have Fia and Sophia. And we have other Louis. I think Louis has disappeared. I think since I told him that I'm going to hire him for free. He wasn't happy with that. And yeah, so let's continue. Let's have a nice day tomorrow, guys. We wish you, if you're in Kenya, we wish you a good public holiday tomorrow. Take some time to rest. And let's see you on Friday where, we'll have another more interesting topic to discuss. But, we are also interested in discussing societal issues that are of importance, whether or not they are what we call SEXY subjects. The fact is that they need to be discussed. Yeah, it's important for us to discuss them because we shouldn't just be, I'm not going to criticize people who dance. All they do is dancing and things like that. But what I'm saying is, let's show that we have a brain, that we analyze, that we actually think. And we women especially need to come to the forefront and start. I'm sure you've got many more interesting women who can come on board. And next time, let's talk about relationships, because it looks to me like that seems to be a really hot topic right now. Yes, I'm actually concerned about what's happening to when we talk about cost of living, since the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission have decided that cost of living is a thing. Let's talk about it let's talk about it with the view of how that is impacting on people's marriages right now. Cost of living, relationships, apart from marriages, relationships, whether people are having babies or not. Are we going to be the other? The fact is that we have a fertility decline globally. Countries like South Korea, they're soon going to be extinct with no people. Because of what? Because of the 4B movement. Yeah. So there's so many things that we should talk about, because this is all part of cost of living. Why is the cost of living being raised? Because of corruption. Yes, because of corruption. It contributes to the high cost of living. Corruption,
Poverty.
impunity, and democratic principles.
Poverty.
Yes, it contributes to poverty. And with poverty comes reduced fertility of women and men. Yeah. So that becomes an issue. So what happens in the end is that you don't have people to do your job. You want to expand, you want to be a big superpower, but you don't have the people. To take your country forward. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot to discuss. So thank you so much for staying with us. Susan, thank you so much for co-hosting. Always such a pleasure to chat with you. Always so knowledgeable and always done your research, always on time. So we'll see you guys on Friday. Thank you very much for joining us on the live show. And for those who are coming later, please remember to thumbs up our video as much as you can and share and call people on our vlog so that they can also be part of this discussion. Next time, join us in the studio. I'm sure you have a lot to contribute. Sophia, especially, I'd really like to hear from you next time. Join us in the studio, because it looks to me like you know a lot about Kasongo and the rest, right? So have a good night, guys. Bye. To-dos. Bye-bye. Yeah.